3 months ago, I was untouchable. Marcus Kaine, CEO of Kaine Industries, worth $50 million, married to the woman I thought was my soulmate. I had the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, a penthouse that made grown men weep, and a reputation for crushing anyone stupid enough to cross me. Now? I'm standing in that same penthouse, but it's empty. The movers came yesterday. My company's hemorrhaging money faster than a stabbed artery. My wife filed for divorce, claiming I'm mentally unstable. And the business world treats me like I've got the plague. All because she made me return his wife's calls pretending to be her. One phone call, one lie, one moment of blind trust that unraveled everything I'd built with my bare hands and sheer bloody-mindedness. But here's the thing about Marcus Kaine. I don't roll over and die. I get even. And when I'm done with Sarah and her boyfriend, David Chen, they're going to wish they'd picked someone else to screw over. Because I'm about to remind them why I got to the top in the first place. Marcus, honey, can you take this call? It's Elena Chen about the charity auction. That's how it started. Sarah, looking absolutely radiant in her silk robe, holding out my phone with that sweet smile that used to make my chest tight. This was 3 months ago, back when I still thought I'd won the lottery in the wife department. Why is Elena calling me? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. Shouldn't she be talking to you about charity stuff? Oh, you know how these society wives are. She probably wants to make sure you're on board before she commits David to anything big. Sarah's laugh was musical. Practiced. Just be your charming self. I should have known. Sarah never called anyone charming unless she wanted something. Elena, Marcus Kaine here. Marcus, thank God. Listen, I need you to know that David can't make the board meeting tomorrow. Family emergency came up. The voice was definitely female, refined, with just a hint of panic that rich wives get when their perfect lives show cracks. I'm sorry to hear that. Should we reschedule? No, David specifically said to move forward. He trusts your judgment completely. Just, please don't mention this call to anyone. David's handling some sensitive family matters. Something felt off, but I'd built my fortune on making quick decisions and trusting my gut. My gut said this woman was genuinely distressed. Of course, family comes first. Thank you so much, Marcus. David speaks so highly of you. The call ended, and I looked at Sarah. That was weird. She seemed really upset. Sarah's expression was all concern and sympathy. Poor Elena. I heard through the grapevine that David's mother is sick. She's probably trying to hold everything together. And just like that, I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. Over the next 6 weeks, Elena called me 17 times. Always family emergencies. Always David having to miss important meetings or calls. Always that same breathless gratitude when I covered for him. Marcus, I hate to ask, but could you handle the Singapore call today? Marcus, David's dealing with doctors. Can you take the merger discussion? Marcus, you're a lifesaver. David said you'd understand. Each time Sarah would hover nearby, ready with context about Elena's situation or David's family drama. Each time I played the understanding business partner, the reliable friend. I was so busy being a good guy that I didn't notice I was missing my own calls. Clients trying to reach me while I was covering for David. Partners wondering why I seemed distracted. Opportunities slipping through my fingers while I played phone tag for a man I barely knew. The truth came out in the most humiliating way possible. Mr. Kaine, we have Elena Chen on line 2 for you. My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom during our quarterly board meeting. I was in the middle of presenting our expansion plans to a room full of investors and board members. Important people who controlled important money. Take a message, Janet. I'm in the middle of... Sir, she says it's urgent. Something about David? I sighed and looked at the room full of expectant faces. Gentlemen, excuse me for just one moment. Family emergency. I picked up the phone, expecting the familiar voice I'd been hearing for weeks. Elena, what's wrong now? I'm sorry, who is this? The voice was different, completely different. Crisp, professional, and absolutely confused. This is Marcus Kaine. You called me about David? Mr. Kaine, I think there's been some mistake. I'm Elena Chen. I don't know why you'd expect me to call you about my husband, and I certainly don't know why you'd sound so familiar with me. The room went silent. Every face around that mahogany table was staring at me. I could feel my heart stopping and starting like a broken engine. There must be some confusion. You've been calling me for weeks about David's family emergencies. Her laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Mr. Kaine, I haven't spoken to you since the charity auction 3 months ago, and my husband doesn't have family emergencies. His parents are both dead. That's when I heard David Chen's voice in the background. Elena, who are you talking to? Is that Marcus Kaine? Why the hell is he claiming you've been calling him? And then I heard David say something that made my blood freeze. Marcus, what the hell is wrong with you? Elena doesn't call other men. What kind of game are you playing? The room erupted, board members whispering, investors looking concerned, and me standing there like an idiot with a phone in my hand and my reputation crumbling in real time. Mr. Kaine, Elena's voice was ice cold now. I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but if you ever claim I've been calling you again, I'll have my lawyers destroy you. The line went dead. The room stayed silent for exactly 5 seconds before everyone started talking at once. What was that about? Is Kaine having some kind of breakdown? Should we postpone this meeting? Robert Morrison, my biggest investor, stood up slowly. Marcus, I think we need to talk. Privately. That conversation lasted exactly 10 minutes. Long enough for Morrison to explain that if I couldn't keep my personal life from interfering with business, maybe I wasn't fit to run a company anymore. I drove home in a rage, ready to demand answers from Sarah, ready to figure out what the hell had just happened to my life. I found her in our bedroom, packing. Going somewhere? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. She didn't even look up. David and I are flying to Paris tonight. I filed for divorce, Marcus. I'm sorry it had to end this way. You're sorry it had to end this way? I stepped into the room, and she finally looked at me. No guilt, no shame, just satisfaction. Sarah, what the hell have you been doing? What I had to do. She folded a designer dress with careful precision. You were in our way, Marcus. David needed your business connections, but you would never have helped him if you knew we were together. So you pretended to be Elena Chen. For 6 weeks, and you bought every word. She smiled, and it was like looking at a stranger. Did you know David recorded some of those calls? The ones where you agreed to misrepresent his position to your board? Your investors are going to love hearing those. The room spun. You set me up. We positioned ourselves strategically. There's a difference. Why? The word came out like a growl. Why not just leave? Why destroy everything? Sarah finally looked at me with something like pity. Because David wanted your company, Marcus. And the easiest way to get it was to make you look incompetent. A hostile takeover is so much easier when the target is damaged goods. She zipped up her suitcase and headed for the door. Your lawyer will call you tomorrow. I'm asking for half of everything, plus emotional distress damages. You put me through hell with your erratic behavior. My erratic behavior? That's what it'll look like in court. All those strange phone calls, missing meetings, claiming my affair partner's wife was calling you. She shrugged. It paints a picture, doesn't it? I grabbed her arm as she reached the door. Not hard, just enough to stop her. Sarah, look at me. She did, and for a split second I saw something that might have been guilt. Was any of it real? The first year was nice, she said, before David and I realized how useful you could be. Then she was gone, and I was standing alone in a bedroom that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop. Text messages, missed calls, emails, all from the same sources. Business partners, investors, clients, all wanting to know what the hell was happening at Kaine Industries. The story had leaked. Someone had recorded my conversation with Elena Chen, and it was making rounds in the business community faster than gossip at a country club. Marcus Kaine claims tech mogul's wife has been calling him for weeks. Kaine Industries' CEO suffers public breakdown during board meeting. Is Marcus Kaine losing his mind? I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee that tasted like ash, reading article after article about my apparent mental collapse. The comment sections were particularly brutal. Always knew Kaine was unstable. You don't get that rich without being a little crazy. Probably having an affair and trying to cover it up. His poor wife must be mortified. His poor wife. If they only knew. My phone rang. Robert Morrison. Marcus, we need to talk. Let me guess, you want me out? The board is concerned. These allegations about inappropriate contact with Elena Chen, the erratic behavior during meetings, the missed calls and appointments over the past month. Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. We think you should take a leave of absence. Get some help. I don't need help, Robert. I need you to listen. The decision's been made. David Chen's consortium made an offer for Kaine Industries this morning. A very generous offer. I almost laughed. Of course they had. How generous? Enough to keep the investors happy. Much more than the company's worth in its current state. Current state, meaning damaged by my apparent insanity. And if I refuse the leave of absence? Then we vote you out. Either way, Marcus, you're done. The call ended, and I sat there staring at my empty kitchen. 42 years old, and I was watching my life's work disappear because I'd been too trusting to see a con job coming. But here's the thing about being knocked down. It gives you a perfect view of who kicked you. I opened my laptop and started researching David Chen. Really researching him. Not just the surface-level business profile I'd known before. If he wanted to play games, I was going to learn the rules. David Chen, 38, CEO of TechFlow Industries, married to Elena Chen for 8 years, no children. Elena was a former prosecutor who'd given up her career after marriage. Interesting. A prosecutor who became a trophy wife. That seemed like a hell of a step down for someone who'd built a career putting criminals behind bars. I kept digging. David's business history was impressive on paper, but when I started looking at the details, patterns emerged. Companies he'd acquired, restructured, and sold, always at a massive profit. Always after the previous owners had suffered some kind of public scandal or crisis. 3 companies in 5 years, all tech firms, all owned by men who'd suddenly found themselves dealing with personal disasters right before David swooped in with rescue offers. Jason Webb's wife left him after claims of emotional abuse, company sold to David 6 months later. Michael Torres, arrested for embezzlement charges that were later dropped, company sold to David during the legal chaos. Rick Patterson caught in a sex scandal that destroyed his marriage, company sold to David as part of his divorce settlement. And now Marcus Kaine claims wife of business partner has been calling him, appears mentally unstable, company being purchased by David Chen's consortium. The pattern was too clean to be coincidence. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer, James Morrison. No relation to Robert, thankfully. James, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to keep it completely confidential. What kind of confidential are we talking about, Marcus? The kind that could save my company and destroy some very dangerous people. The Morrison Gallery was hosting an exhibition of contemporary art that nobody actually liked, but everyone pretended to understand. It was the perfect place to accidentally bump into Elena Chen, who sat on the gallery's board of directors. I'd spent 3 weeks planning this encounter. 3 weeks of following her schedule, learning her routines, figuring out when and where I could approach her without David around. She was standing in front of a painting that looked like someone had sneezed on a canvas and called it art. Tall, elegant, with the kind of bone structure that photographers would kill for. But there was something in her posture that didn't match the trophy wife image. She stood like someone ready for a fight. "Interesting piece," I said, stepping up beside her. She glanced at me, and I saw recognition flash in her eyes. "Mr. Kaine." "Mrs. Chen, I was hoping I might run into you here." "Were you?" It wasn't a question. Her voice had that same crisp authority I'd heard during our disastrous phone call. "I owe you an apology and an explanation." "You owe me nothing, but I'm curious about the explanation." Elena Chen was not what I'd expected. David's wife should have been nervous, defensive, maybe a little afraid of the crazy businessman who'd been claiming she called him. Instead, she seemed amused. "Would you like to get coffee? Somewhere private?" She studied my face for a long moment. "There's a cafe around the corner. No photographers, no society pages. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. The cafe was exactly what she'd promised. Small, quiet, the kind of place where business deals died quiet deaths over overpriced lattes. Elena arrived exactly 10 minutes later, taking the seat across from me like she was preparing for a cross-examination. "So," she said, "explain to me why you thought I was calling you." I told her everything. The phone calls, Sarah's explanations, the charity auction cover story, the family emergencies. I watched her face as I talked, looking for any sign of surprise or confusion. There wasn't any. "Your wife is very clever," Elena said when I finished. "You don't seem shocked by any of this." Should I be? She stirred her coffee with mathematical precision. "Marcus, can I call you Marcus? How much do you know about my husband's business practices?" "Apparently not enough." David specializes in distressed acquisitions, companies whose owners are dealing with personal crises. It's remarkably profitable. You make it sound like he creates the crises. Elena smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut glass. David is very good at recognizing opportunities. We sat in silence for a moment, and I realized Elena Chen was not David's victim. She was his accomplice, or his enemy, or something else entirely. "Why did you agree to meet me?" I asked. "Because I've been watching my husband's business practices for 5 years, and I think it's time someone stopped him." "Someone?" "You, specifically. You have the resources, the motivation, and most importantly, you have nothing left to lose." She leaned forward. "David destroyed your life, Marcus. Doesn't that make you angry?" "Furious." "Good. Fury is useful." Elena opened her purse and pulled out a small recording device. "David recorded your phone conversations with Sarah, all of them. He's planning to use them as evidence of your mental instability if you try to fight the buyout." "You have the recordings?" "I have copies of everything. Financial records, business communications, personal files." She paused. "David isn't very careful about digital security." "Why are you helping me?" Elena's smile faded. "Because I used to be a prosecutor, Marcus. I put criminals in prison for a living, and then I married one." "Why didn't you leave?" "Because leaving wouldn't stop him, it would just make him more careful." She slid the recording device across the table. "But destroying him? That would stop him permanently." I picked up the device. "What's on here?" "David and Sarah planning your downfall. Every detail, every step, every backup plan." Her eyes met mine. "Including what they're planning to do to the next target." "There's a next target?" "There's always a next target. That's how David operates. He's already identified his next acquisition, Peterson Technologies. The owner, Robert Peterson, is about to have some very personal problems. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of problems? The kind that involve his teenage daughter and some very compromising photos that David's people are preparing to release. That's when I knew Elena Chen wasn't just helping me save my company. She was asking me to help her save lives. What do you want me to do? I want you to help me destroy them both, completely, professionally, financially, personally. She leaned back in her chair. But I want to do it legally, by the book. No corners cut, no dirty tricks, just pure, methodical justice. That could take months. I've been planning this for 2 years. I can wait a little longer. I looked at this woman across from me, elegant, brilliant, dangerous, and realized David Chen had made a critical error. He'd underestimated his wife. What's the first step? We gather evidence, real evidence, the kind that will hold up in court and destroy them both completely. Elena smiled again, and this time it was genuine. And then we watch them burn. Elena's townhouse was not what I'd expected from David Chen's trophy wife. No decorator's showpiece, no magazine-ready perfection. Instead, it looked like a working office disguised as a home. David thinks this is my hobby room, Elena said, leading me into what should have been a formal dining room. He has no idea what I actually do in here. The space was incredible. Wall-to-wall filing cabinets, a professional-grade computer setup, evidence boards that looked like something from a police procedural. Photos, documents, timelines, connections drawn in different colored string. Jesus Christ, Elena, how long have you been working on this? Since the day I figured out what David really does for a living. She gestured to the evidence board closest to the door. This is Jason Webb's company. David started dating Webb's wife 6 months before the acquisition. Dating his wife? David doesn't do affairs, Marcus. He does strategic relationships. Sarah wasn't the first woman he convinced to destroy her husband for him. I moved closer to the board. Photos of David with different women, financial records, timelines that showed a clear pattern. How many companies? 7 over the past 6 years. Total value of acquired assets, $240 million. And the wives? Divorced their husbands, stayed with David for 6 to 18 months, then disappeared with settlement money. Elena pointed to another board. Rebecca Webb, Michael Torres's ex-wife, Lisa, 3 others, all living very comfortable lives in non-extradition countries. But Sarah's different. She's his partner, not his victim. She's been with him from the beginning. Elena pulled out a thick file. Sarah Williams, that's her real name, has been married 4 times. 3 of her ex-husbands lost everything in mysterious circumstances. I felt sick. Before David? Sarah was running this con long before she met David. He just gave her bigger targets and better resources. I stared at the evidence wall, following the connections, seeing the scope of what they'd been doing. Why haven't you gone to the police? With what? Coincidences? Patterns? Elena Chen claims her husband is a serial corporate predator. She shook her head. I need proof, Marcus. Real, undeniable, legally bulletproof evidence. What kind of evidence? Elena smiled, and I was starting to recognize that expression. It meant someone was about to have a very bad day. The kind we're going to get together. She led me to another section of the room, where a sophisticated recording setup was connected to multiple phone lines. David conducts most of his business from his home office. He thinks it's more secure than using company phones. Elena's smile got sharper. He's wrong. You've been recording him? For 18 months. Every call, every meeting, every conversation with Sarah. She gestured to a wall of labeled hard drives. I have enough recorded evidence to put them both away for decades. Then why haven't you? Because I need corroboration. Independent witnesses, financial records, proof that goes beyond just recordings. Elena turned to face me. I need someone on the inside of their next operation. Peterson Technologies. Exactly. Robert Peterson is a widower with a 16-year-old daughter named Amy. David's planning to use her as leverage. The compromising photos you mentioned. Photos that don't exist yet. But David's people are very good at creating situations where they will exist. Elena's voice was ice cold. Unless we stop them first. I felt that familiar rage building in my chest. The same fury that had built my company, won my battles, and apparently made me an easy target for someone smarter than me. What do you need me to do? First we save Amy Peterson. Then we save her father's company. Then we destroy David and Sarah so completely that they'll never be able to hurt anyone again. How? Elena walked to her computer and pulled up a complex financial document. David's been embezzling from his own company to fund these operations. Millions of dollars that should be going to shareholders. I have the records, but I need someone to verify them independently. Someone with business connections. Someone who understands corporate finance and has the credibility to make accusations stick. She turned to look at me. Someone like the former CEO of Kaine Industries. Former being the key word. Only temporarily. When this is over, Marcus, you'll have your company back. And David will have nothing. I studied the financial documents, following the money trails, seeing the scope of David's embezzlement. It was brilliant and completely illegal. This is enough to destroy him. It's enough to start destroying him. But I want more than just financial crimes, Marcus. I want to expose the entire operation, every victim, every theft, every life they've destroyed. That's a lot of lives to rebuild. Not rebuild, restore. Elena's voice was fierce. Jason Webb, Michael Torres, Rick Patterson, they all deserve to know what really happened to them. They deserve justice. I looked around the room again, taking in the scope of what Elena had built. Years of work, thousands of hours of investigation, all leading to this moment. Elena, can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? You could have chosen any of David's victims. Why did you approach me? She was quiet for a long moment, and when she answered, her voice was softer than I'd heard it. Because when I researched you, I realized you're the only one who fought back. Jason Webb left town after his divorce. Michael Torres started drinking himself to death. Rick Patterson had a nervous breakdown. She met my eyes. But you got angry, and anger is exactly what I need. What kind of partnership are we talking about here? Full partnership. We plan together, execute together, succeed or fail together. Elena extended her hand. Equal partners in bringing down David Chen and Sarah Williams. I shook her hand and realized I was probably making either the best or worst decision of my life. When do we start? We already have. Amy Peterson is supposed to meet a college recruiter tomorrow afternoon. A recruiter who works for David. How do we stop it? Elena's smile was back, sharp and dangerous. Very carefully, and very, very thoroughly. The next morning, Elena and I sat in a rental car outside Amy Peterson's high school, watching teenagers stream out of the building. Elena had a camera with a telephoto lens, I had binoculars, and we both had earpieces connected to the recording equipment in Elena's bag. There, Elena said, focusing her camera. Red backpack, blonde hair, walking alone? Amy Peterson looked exactly like what she was. A smart 16-year-old who had no idea she was being hunted. She walked with purpose, checking her phone, completely oblivious to the man in the dark sedan who'd been following her for 3 blocks. Is that our guy? I asked. Marcus Reed. That's not his real name, obviously. David's used him for 3 previous operations. Elena snapped photos as Reed got out of his car. He approaches the targets, usually poses as a college recruiter or talent scout. Very good at gaining trust. Reed intercepted Amy at the corner, and even from a distance, I could see her brighten when he started talking. She nodded enthusiastically, smiled, and when Reed handed her a business card, she took it eagerly. What's he telling her? Elena had a directional microphone aimed at them. Full scholarship to Columbia, early admission program. Needs to meet with her today to discuss the opportunity. Her voice was tight with anger. Classic Predator playbook. Amy was nodding, asking questions, getting more excited by the minute. Reed pointed to a coffee shop across the street. Isolated, small, the kind of place where a conversation wouldn't be overheard. We can't let her go in there, I said. We're not going to. Elena started the car. But we can't just rush over and warn her. Reed will disappear, and they'll try again next week with a different approach. So what's the plan? Elena's smile was getting familiar, and I was learning to appreciate its implications. We're going to turn the hunter into the prey. She pulled into the coffee shop parking lot and handed me a small recording device. I'm going in as a concerned parent. You're going in as a concerned citizen. We get Reed talking, get him to incriminate himself, and then we call the police. What about Amy? Amy's going to learn that the world is more dangerous than she thought, but she's going to learn it safely. Elena got out of the car and walked toward the coffee shop with the confidence of someone who'd prosecuted dozens of predators. I followed, trying to look like a random customer instead of someone planning to destroy a man's life. Inside, Reed had chosen a corner table. Amy was sitting across from him, leaning forward eagerly as he explained something about special requirements for the scholarship program. Elena approached their table like she owned the place. Excuse me, are you Amy Peterson? Amy looked up, confused. Yes? I'm Elena Morrison. I work with the guidance counselor's office. Elena's voice was warm, professional, concerned. Could I speak with you for a moment? There's been some confusion about this scholarship program. Reed's face went carefully neutral. I'm sorry, but Amy and I are in the middle of an important discussion about her future. I'm sure you are. Elena turned her attention to Amy. Honey, could you step outside with me for just a minute? I need to verify some information about this program. Amy looked between Elena and Reed, uncertain. Is there a problem? No problem at all. Just standard verification procedures. Reed stood up. Miss Morrison, I'm not sure who you are, but this meeting is private. That's when I made my move, sliding into the chair next to Reed before he could object. Actually, I'd like to hear about this scholarship program too. My daughter's a junior, always looking for opportunities. Reed was trapped between Elena and me, with Amy looking increasingly confused. I think there's been some misunderstanding, Reed said, reaching for his briefcase. Perhaps we should reschedule? Oh, I don't think so, Elena said, her prosecutor voice coming out in full force. See, I called Columbia University this morning. They don't have an early admission program for high school juniors. They also don't have any recruiters named Marcus Reed. Amy's face went pale. What? Reed tried to stand, but I put a hand on his shoulder. Sit down, Marcus. Or should I call you by your real name? Thomas Garrett, convicted of fraud in 3 states? I don't know what you're talking about. Elena pulled out her phone. Should I call the police now, or would you like to explain to Amy what you really wanted from her? Reed looked around the coffee shop, calculating his options. Elena and I had positioned ourselves to block his exits, and Amy was staring at him with growing horror. This is ridiculous. I'm a legitimate businessman. Working for David Chen, I said. Setting up teenage girls for blackmail. You're not a businessman, Thomas. You're a predator. That's when Reed broke. He lunged for his briefcase, trying to grab something inside, but Elena was faster. She had his wrist twisted behind his back before he could reach whatever he was going for. Amy, call 911, now! Amy fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. What's happening? I don't understand. You were being targeted by criminals, sweetheart, but you're safe now. Elena held Reed until the police arrived, and I made sure to record every word he said while we waited. Threats, bribes, and finally, a confession that David Chen had hired him to develop compromising material on Amy Peterson. Why? Amy asked, as Reed was being led away in handcuffs. Why would someone want to hurt my dad? Elena and I exchanged looks. How do you explain to a 16-year-old that her father's company was worth $40 million, and some people would destroy lives to get it? There are people who hurt others for money, Elena said gently. But there are also people who stop them. You just met both kinds today. After the police left and Amy's father arrived to take her home, Elena and I sat in the coffee shop, sharing the adrenaline come-down that follows a successful operation. One down, I said. Dozens to go, Elena replied. But this was the important one. Amy Peterson gets to stay a normal teenager. And her father? Gets to keep his company, for now. Elena pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. David just called an emergency meeting with Sarah. They know something went wrong. Good, let them panic. Panic makes people sloppy, and when David gets sloppy, he makes mistakes. Elena's smile was back. And we're going to be there to catch every single one. David's panic lasted exactly 24 hours. Then he got smart, which made him infinitely more dangerous. Elena and I were monitoring his communications from her townhouse when the shift happened. One day he was making frantic calls about the Peterson situation. The next day he went completely silent. He's switched to encrypted channels, Elena said, staring at her computer screen. All his calls are going through a secure network now. Can you break the encryption? Not quickly enough to be useful. Elena leaned back in her chair, frustrated. David's not stupid, Marcus. He knew his communications were vulnerable. The Peterson thing spooked him into upgrading his security. So we're flying blind now? Not completely. I still have access to his financial systems. He can encrypt his calls, but he can't hide money transfers. Elena pulled up a complex spreadsheet. Look at this. The numbers showed a pattern of payments to various shell companies, but the amounts were smaller now, more carefully disguised. He's being more careful with the embezzlement, too. Which means we need to change tactics. Elena turned to face me. We can't rely on intercepting his communications anymore. We need to get closer to the source. Meaning? Meaning one of us needs to get inside David's organization. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, I'm not exactly undercover material. David knows my face, my voice, my entire life story. Not you, me. The words hung in the air between us like a live grenade. Absolutely not. Marcus, think about it. I'm already inside. I'm his wife. I have access to his home office, his personal files, his private conversations with Sarah. You're also the person he's most likely to suspect if something goes wrong. Only if I get caught. Elena's voice was calm, rational, completely insane. I've been living a double life for 2 years. I can do this. Elena, if David figures out what you're doing, he'll what? Divorce me? Kill me? She shrugged. He's planning to do both anyway, Marcus. David doesn't keep loose ends around. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? Elena pulled out another file, this one thicker than the others. David's previous wives, 3 of them, all died in accidents after their divorces were finalized. I felt the room temperature drop about 20 degrees. Jesus Christ! Car accident, hiking mishap, food poisoning, all perfectly explainable, all completely convenient for David. Elena's voice was matter-of-fact, but her hands were shaking slightly. I'm not his wife, Marcus. I'm his next victim. Then we get you out of there, now, tonight. And lose our only chance to stop him? No. Elena stood up and walked to her evidence wall. I've spent 2 years building this case. I'm not running when we're this close. Elena. Besides, David needs me alive until the divorce is final. I'm worth more to him as a grieving widow than as an ex-wife. She turned back to me. We have time. Not much, but enough. I looked at this woman who'd risked everything to stop a monster, and realized I was either working with the bravest person I'd ever met, or the most reckless. What's your plan? Elena smiled, and I was getting used to that expression, meaning someone was about to have their world destroyed. David's planning something big, bigger than individual company acquisitions. I've seen fragments of financial projections, references to a consortium deal that would net hundreds of millions. What kind of consortium? I don't know yet, but Sarah's been spending a lot of time researching tech companies on the West Coast. Big ones, established ones. A mass acquisition? More like a coordinated attack. Multiple companies, multiple scandals, all happening simultaneously. Elena pulled up a map on her computer screen, with red pins marking various cities. San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, Denver. Dozens of companies, all owned by men in their 40s and 50s. All with families. All with vulnerabilities that David and Sarah can exploit. Elena zoomed in on the map. Marcus, we're not just talking about saving individual companies anymore. We're talking about stopping a coordinated assault on the entire tech industry. How do we stop something that big? We don't stop it. We turn it against them. Elena's smile got sharper. We let David and Sarah think their plan is working, and then we destroy them when they're most exposed. That's a hell of a risk. It's the only way to get them all. The entire network, not just David and Sarah. Elena turned to face me fully. Marcus, this goes deeper than just them. They're working with other people, other couples, other predators. If we just take down David and Sarah, the rest of the network survives. How many others? At least 6 other couples that I've identified. Probably more. Elena gestured to another section of her evidence wall. It's a franchise operation, Marcus. David and Sarah train other couples, provide them with resources and targets, take a percentage of the profits. The scope of it was staggering. Dozens of people, hundreds of companies, thousands of lives destroyed for profit. What do you need me to do? I need you to be bait. Excuse me? Elena pulled out a thick folder and handed it to me. David thinks he destroyed you, but he's wrong. You still have connections, resources, credibility with the right people. More importantly, you have something David wants. What? Revenge. David thinks you're broken, but he's also worried you might try to fight back. He's been monitoring your activities, trying to predict what you'll do next. How do you know that? Because he asked me to watch you. I stared at her. What? 3 weeks ago, David asked me to keep an eye on Marcus Kaine. He wanted to know if you were planning any kind of retaliation. Elena's expression was carefully neutral. He has no idea that I'd already approached you. So you've been reporting back to him? I've been telling him exactly what he wants to hear. That you're broken, drinking too much, not a threat to anyone. Elena pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. See? Regular updates on your pathetic decline. The messages were brutal. Detailed reports of a man falling apart, losing hope, becoming increasingly isolated and desperate. Reading them felt like looking at my own obituary. Jesus, Elena, you made me sound suicidal. I made you sound harmless, which is exactly what David needed to hear to get careless. Elena put her phone away. But now we're going to change the narrative. How? You're going to start fighting back, publicly, aggressively. Make David think you're becoming a real threat. Won't that make him more careful? It'll make him reactive instead of proactive. David's used to being the hunter, Marcus. When he becomes the hunted, he makes mistakes. Elena walked to her computer and pulled up a detailed timeline. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to start rebuilding your reputation. Reach out to old business contacts, hint that you have information about David's business practices, suggest that you're planning some kind of legal action, and David will panic. David will try to discredit you before you can hurt him. He'll escalate his timeline, push his people to move faster, take bigger risks. Elena's eyes were bright with anticipation. And when he does, we'll be ready. Ready how? Elena gestured to her evidence wall. Every move David makes, every call he places, every order he gives, we'll be documenting all of it, building a case that no court in the world could ignore. And Sarah? Sarah's the key to everything. David trusts her completely, shares everything with her. If we can get Sarah to incriminate herself, we get David too. How do we do that? Elena's smile was back, and I realized she'd been planning this conversation for weeks. You're going to call her. I'm going to what? You're going to call Sarah and tell her you want to make a deal. You'll drop any legal action against David, sign a non-disclosure agreement, walk away quietly in exchange for your company back. She'll never believe I'd give up that easily. She'll believe it because it's exactly what David expects from you. He thinks you're weak, broken, ready to surrender. Elena pulled out a recording device. And while you're making that call, I'll be recording every word. I looked at the device, then at Elena, then at the massive evidence wall that represented 2 years of her life. This is insane. This is justice. Elena's voice was fierce. Marcus, these people destroyed your life for money. They've destroyed dozens of other lives. They're planning to destroy hundreds more. Are you really going to let them walk away? No, but I want to make sure we're smart about this. We are being smart. We're using David's arrogance against him, Sarah's greed against her, and their trust in each other against both of them. Elena was right, and we both knew it. David and Sarah had spent so much time manipulating other people that they'd forgotten what it felt like to be manipulated. When do we start? Tomorrow. David's flying to San Francisco for meetings with potential targets. Sarah will be alone, feeling confident, ready to gloat about how completely they destroyed you. Perfect time for me to call and beg for mercy. Perfect time for you to give her enough rope to hang herself with. Elena handed me a script she'd prepared, complete with emotional beats and strategic pauses. Study this tonight. Tomorrow you're going to give the performance of your life. I looked at the script, then at Elena, and realized that somewhere along the way, our partnership had become something more than just mutual revenge. We were a team now, united by shared purpose and growing trust. Elena, after this is over, we celebrate. But right now, we focus on destroying the people who tried to destroy us. Fair enough. I folded the script and put it in my pocket. Let's burn their world down. Sarah answered on the third ring, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice before she even said hello. Marcus, what a pleasant surprise. Hello, Sarah. You sound good. I am good. Very good, actually. There was music in the background, expensive wine in her voice. David and I just got back from Napa, celebrating some recent business successes. Elena was sitting across from me, monitoring the recording equipment and taking notes. She'd coached me through this conversation a dozen times, but my heart was still hammering against my ribs. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to talk to you about those business successes. Oh? Sarah's tone shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. What about them? I want to make a deal. Silence. Then a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Marcus, you're not exactly in a position to negotiate anything. Maybe not, but I'm in a position to cause problems. I kept my voice calm, defeated, exactly like Elena had instructed. I've been talking to lawyers, Sarah, good lawyers. They think I have a case. A case for what? Fraud, conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Apparently, what you and David did to me has a lot of fancy legal names. Another pause. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was ice cold. You can't prove anything, Marcus. I can prove you impersonated Elena Chen. I have records of every call, timestamps, phone logs. I can prove you deliberately sabotaged my business relationships. That's not illegal. Maybe not, but it's enough to make David's life very uncomfortable, especially when I start telling other business owners about his acquisition methods. Elena nodded approvingly and scribbled a note. She's getting nervous. What do you want? Sarah asked. I want my company back. I want my reputation restored. And I want both of you to disappear from my life forever. In exchange for my silence, I'll sign whatever non-disclosure agreements you want, drop any legal action, never speak about what happened between us. Sarah was quiet for almost a minute. I could practically hear her calculating, weighing the risks and benefits. You'd really walk away after everything that happened? Sarah, I'm 42 years old and I'm starting over from nothing. Fighting you and David will take years and cost millions, and there's no guarantee I'll win. I put just the right amount of exhaustion in my voice. I'm tired. I just want my life back. David won't like this. David doesn't have to like it. He just has to honor it. I paused, letting the silence build. Unless you think he can't be trusted to keep a deal? Of course he can be trusted. Then we have an agreement? I'll have to discuss it with David. He's in San Francisco right now, but I'll call him tonight. Elena was writing furiously. She's taking the bait. Push for details. What's he doing in San Francisco? Business meetings, new acquisition opportunities. Sarah's voice had relaxed slightly. David's always working on something bigger. Must be nice to have that kind of success. It is. David's very good at identifying opportunities that other people miss. Like my company? Sarah laughed, and there was genuine warmth in it now. Marcus, your company was just the beginning. David has plans that would make your little business look like a lemonade stand. Such as? Let's just say that by this time next year, David will own half the tech companies in California. Elena's eyes went wide. She wrote, Get her to say more. That's ambitious. How does someone acquire that many companies? Very carefully, and with the right kind of leverage. Sarah's voice was getting looser, more confident. David's developed some very effective methods for motivating sellers. Methods like what you did to me? Methods much more sophisticated than what we did to you. You were practice, Marcus, a warm-up exercise. My hand tightened on the phone, but I kept my voice level. Practice for what? For the real operation. Coordinated acquisitions, multiple targets, billions in total value. Sarah was practically purring now. David calls it the California Project. Elena was taking notes so fast her pen was smoking. Sounds impressive. It's revolutionary. Instead of acquiring companies one at a time, David figured out how to acquire entire market segments simultaneously. How? By attacking all the major players at once, create scandals, destroy reputations, crash stock prices, then sweep in with rescue offers. Sarah's voice was full of admiration. David recruited teams in 6 major cities. Each team targets multiple companies simultaneously. When they all strike at once, it looks like a natural market correction instead of a coordinated attack. Elena wrote, "Holy shit," in large letters. "That's brilliant," I managed. "It is. And it's already started. David's people have been positioning themselves for months, getting close to targets, gathering information, preparing for the coordinated strike. When? Soon. David's meeting with the San Francisco team right now, finalizing their target list." Sarah's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Marcus, by Christmas, David will be worth over $1 billion. And the people who lose their companies? Will learn not to trust the wrong people, just like you did." The line went quiet, and I realized Sarah had just confessed to a criminal conspiracy that would destroy hundreds of lives and steal billions of dollars. Elena was staring at me with something like awe. She wrote, "We got her. Sarah, I hope David appreciates what he has in you." "He does. We're partners in every sense of the word." Her voice softened. "Marcus, I hope you understand that what happened between us wasn't personal. It was just business." I understand completely. And I did. Sarah and David weren't evil. They were empty. Hollow people who filled themselves with other people's lives and money. "When will you have an answer about our deal?" "I'll call you tomorrow. David lands tonight, and we'll discuss your proposal first thing in the morning." "I'll be waiting." The call ended, and Elena and I sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing what we'd just heard. "Marcus, do you realize what just happened?" Sarah just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering in detail on a recorded phone call. Not just Sarah. She implicated David, described their entire operation, gave us locations, timelines, methods. Elena was practically vibrating with excitement. "Marcus, this recording could destroy their entire network." "What's our next move?" Elena was already reaching for her phone. "We call the FBI." "Wait." I grabbed her hand. "Elena, if we turn this over to the FBI now, what happens to the people who are about to be targeted?" "The FBI will protect them." "Will they? How long will it take to investigate, build a case, get warrants? Weeks, months?" I shook my head. "David's people are in position right now. The attacks could start any day." Elena stared at me. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we warn the targets ourselves, tonight, before David can hurt anyone else." "Marcus, we're not law enforcement. We can't just sit here while David destroys more lives." I stood up and walked to Elena's evidence wall. "Look at all these companies, all these people who never got a warning. We have the chance to be different." Elena was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "If we warn the targets, David will know his operation is blown. He'll run, destroy evidence, disappear before we can get him." "Maybe. Or maybe he'll panic and make the kind of mistakes that put him in prison for the rest of his life." Elena looked at her evidence wall, then at the recording equipment, then at me. "You realize this could backfire completely. We could lose everything we've worked for." "Elena, 3 months ago, David and Sarah destroyed my life because they thought I was weak. Tonight, Sarah confessed to crimes that could put her away for decades because she thought I was broken." I met her eyes. Maybe it's time we stopped playing defense. Elena was quiet for another moment. Then she smiled. The sharp, dangerous smile that meant someone was about to have their world destroyed. "All right, Marcus. Let's go save some companies. Elena's computer showed 17 companies in the San Francisco Bay Area that matched David's target profile. 17 families who were about to have their lives destroyed by people they'd never met. We can't warn them all tonight, Elena said, scrolling through the list. Even if we could reach them, they'd think we were crazy. Then we pick the most vulnerable targets and work from there. Elena highlighted 3 companies on the list: TechFlow Solutions, DataBridge Systems, and Cloud Vault Security. All family-owned, all worth between 50 and 200 million, all with owners who have teenage children. David's specialty. His people are probably already in position. Fake college recruiters, talent scouts, social media contacts. The attacks could start tomorrow. I looked at the names and addresses, thinking about Amy Peterson and how close she'd come to being David's victim. What if we contact the police in each city, give them the information about David's people? With what evidence? We have Sarah's confession, but no proof that these specific companies are being targeted. Elena shook her head. The police can't arrest people for crimes they haven't committed yet. Then we make the evidence. Elena looked at me. What do you mean? David's people are in position, ready to make contact with their targets. What if we intercept those contacts, get them on record attempting to commit crimes? Marcus, that's incredibly dangerous. If David's people realize they're being set up, they won't, because we're going to be smarter than they are. I pulled up the map of San Francisco on Elena's computer. David thinks he's the only one who can run a coordinated operation. Let's prove him wrong. Elena stared at the screen for a long moment, and I could see her prosecutor instincts warring with her common sense. What exactly are you proposing? We go to San Francisco, tonight. We identify David's people before they can make contact with their targets, and we turn the hunters into the hunted. How? The same way you saved Amy Peterson. We get there first, warn the targets, and set up surveillance to catch David's people in the act. Elena was quiet, thinking it through. That would require identifying David's operatives before they make their moves. Do you have information about David's San Francisco team? Elena pulled out another file. Some. I know David's been working with a couple named Rick and Monica Shaw. They've been in San Francisco for 3 months, establishing identities, building relationships. What kind of identities? Rick poses as a venture capitalist. Monica works as a consultant for executive search firms. Elena showed me photos of an attractive couple in their 30s. They're good at what they do, Marcus. Professional, believable, completely ruthless. Any idea who they're targeting first? Elena checked her notes. Based on David's previous patterns, probably the youngest target with the most vulnerabilities. Someone whose company can be acquired quickly once the scandal breaks. I looked at the list again. Cloud Vault Security. The owner is 38, recently divorced, has a 17-year-old son. Perfect target for David's methods. Then that's where we start. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. Elena, how fast can you get us to San Francisco? Marcus, this is insane. We don't know what we're walking into. We know David's people are about to destroy innocent lives for money. We know they think they're untouchable. And we know they have no idea we're coming. I turned to face her. Elena, 3 hours ago, Sarah confessed to conspiracy and racketeering because she thought I was broken. Tomorrow, David's people are going to attempt fraud and extortion because they think they're safe. What happens when we prove them wrong? Elena looked at her evidence wall, then at the recording of Sarah's confession, then at me. We catch them, all of them, on video, on audio, with witnesses and evidence that no court could ignore. Exactly. Elena grabbed her own jacket and started packing recording equipment. David's in San Francisco until tomorrow night. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. How fast? Elena's smile was back, sharp and dangerous. Fast enough to be in position when David's people make their first move. Fast enough to turn David's coordinated attack into his coordinated destruction. 3 hours later, we were on a plane to San Francisco, with a plan that was either brilliant or suicidal, and recording equipment that would either save lives or get us killed. "Marcus," Elena said as the plane took off, "are you sure about this?" I looked out the window at the lights disappearing below us and thought about Amy Peterson, about Jason Webb and Michael Torres, and all the other people whose lives David and Sarah had destroyed. Elena, 3 months ago I thought I had everything. Company, wife, future. Then I learned that none of it was real, that the woman I loved had been using me to destroy other people's lives. I know. But tonight, for the first time since this started, I feel like I'm fighting for something instead of just fighting against something. I turned to look at her. I'm fighting for the chance to stop David before he hurts anyone else. I'm fighting for justice for all his previous victims. And I'm fighting alongside someone who's become... What? I realized what I was about to say and stopped myself. Elena and I had been partners for weeks now, working together, trusting each other, building something that felt like more than just shared revenge. "Someone I trust completely," I finished. Elena's expression softened. "Marcus, when this is over, when David and Sarah are in prison and their network is destroyed, what happens to us?" "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." Elena reached over and took my hand. So would I. The plane flew through the night toward San Francisco, carrying 2 people who'd started as victims and become something else entirely. Partners, allies, and maybe something more. But first, we had to destroy David Chen's empire before it could destroy anyone else. We landed in San Francisco at 2 a.m. and went straight to work. Elena had used her contacts to get us a suite at the Fairmont with a view of the financial district, and we spent the pre-dawn hours setting up surveillance equipment and reviewing everything we knew about David's operation. "Cloud Vault Security is located here," Elena said, pointing to a pin on our map. "The owner, James Rodriguez, lives in Marin County with his son, Miguel. Based on David's pattern, they'll target Miguel first." "How?" "Probably through school. Monica Shaw has been volunteering at several high schools in the area, establishing herself as a college counselor." Elena pulled up Monica's fake LinkedIn profile. "Perfect cover for approaching students about scholarship opportunities." I studied the photos of Miguel Rodriguez, 17, honor student, varsity soccer player. Exactly the kind of kid who'd be excited about college opportunities. "When do we move?" "Miguel has soccer practice at 3 p.m. today. Monica Shaw has a meeting scheduled with the team about athletic scholarships immediately afterward." "How do you know that?" Elena smiled. "I called the school this morning, pretending to be Monica's assistant, confirming her appointment." "And?" "The appointment's real. Monica Shaw is planning to meet with 3 students today, including Miguel Rodriguez." I felt that familiar, cold rage building in my chest. "She's targeting 3 kids? David doesn't do anything small, Marcus. When his people strike, they strike hard and fast." Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it, and her face went pale. "What is it?" "David just landed, 2 hours early." "Shit, that changes everything." "It gets worse." Elena showed me the message. "He's not alone. Sarah's with him, plus 6 other people I don't recognize." "The other teams?" "Probably. David's accelerating his timeline." Elena started packing our surveillance equipment. "Marcus, if all of David's teams are here, we're not just dealing with the San Francisco operation. We're dealing with the entire network." "How many people are we talking about?" Based on what Sarah said, at least 20 operatives across 6 cities. If they're all here, Elena shook her head. This isn't a coordinated attack anymore. This is a blitz. My phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus Kaine. Marcus, it's Sarah. We need to talk. Elena grabbed my arm and pointed to the recording equipment. I nodded and hit the record button. I thought you were going to call me tomorrow about our deal. Plans changed. David wants to meet with you tonight. Tonight? 8 o'clock. The Ritz-Carlton downtown. Presidential suite. Sarah's voice was tight, controlled. Come alone. Why the rush? Because our timeline moved up. David's launching the California project tonight, and he wants to make sure you're not going to be a problem. Elena was writing frantically. It's a trap. What if I say no? Then you become part of the project instead of separate from it. Sarah's voice went cold. Marcus, David's being generous by offering you a way out. Don't make him regret it. I'll be there. Good. And Marcus? Don't do anything stupid. David has people watching you. The line went dead, and Elena and I stared at each other. They know, Elena said. What do they know? Something. Maybe not everything, but enough to be worried. Elena started pulling up files on her laptop. Marcus, if David's launching tonight, that means his people are already in position to attack their targets. How many targets? Elena's fingers flew over the keyboard. Based on the geographical spread and David's previous patterns, maybe 50 companies, maybe more. The scope of it hit me like a physical blow. 50 companies, hundreds of families, all being destroyed tonight while David meets with you to ensure your silence. Elena looked at me. Marcus, this isn't just about stopping David anymore. This is about preventing the largest corporate crime spree in history. Then we stop it. How? We're 2 people against an entire network of criminals. I looked at Elena's evidence wall, then at the recording equipment, then at the map of San Francisco with its dozens of red pins marking potential targets. We do what we've been doing. We get them to confess their crimes, and then we turn the evidence over to law enforcement. Marcus, even if we could record David's confession tonight, his people will still attack their targets. The damage will be done. Not if we warn law enforcement first. Elena stared at me. You want to call the FBI before we meet with David? I want to call everyone. FBI, SEC, local police in every city where David has teams. I pulled out my phone. Elena, we have Sarah's confession on tape. We have detailed information about David's operation. We have dates, locations, methods. We have circumstantial evidence and the word of 2 people with obvious motives for revenge. Then we get better evidence, tonight, at the Ritz-Carlton. I met Elena's eyes. I'm going to that meeting, Elena, and I'm going to get David to confess everything on tape. That's suicide. That's justice. I reached for Elena's hand. But I'm not going alone. Marcus, Sarah said to come alone. Sarah doesn't know that David's wife has been building a case against him for 2 years. I squeezed Elena's hand. Elena, you have access to the presidential suite. You can be there before I arrive, hide recording equipment, maybe even hide yourself. Elena was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her weighing the risks against the potential outcome. If David figures out I'm working against him, he won't, because tonight David thinks he's won. His operation is launching, his network is in place, and the only potential threat is Marcus Kaine, who's desperate enough to make a deal. And if something goes wrong, then at least we tried to stop him before he could hurt anyone else. Elena looked at the map, at the evidence wall, at the recording equipment, and finally at me. All right, Marcus. Let's go catch a confession. The Ritz-Carlton's presidential suite was exactly what you'd expect from a place where powerful people made decisions that affected other people's lives. Floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, and enough space to host a small army. Elena had arrived an hour early, using her access as David's wife to plant recording devices and position herself in the suite's bedroom with a clear view of the main living area. I arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, walking into what I knew was either going to be my vindication or my execution. David was standing by the windows, looking out at the city lights. He looked exactly like what he was, a predator in an expensive suit. Sarah was sitting on the couch, perfectly composed, watching me with the kind of expression you'd see on a cat that had cornered a mouse. "Marcus, thank you for coming." David's voice was warm, friendly, completely at odds with the man who'd spent months destroying my life. "David, Sarah." I kept my voice neutral, defeated. "I understand you wanted to discuss our arrangement." "Arrangement?" David laughed and turned away from the windows. "Marcus, I think there's been some confusion. We're not here to make an arrangement with you." "Then why am I here?" Sarah stood up and walked to a bar cart in the corner. "Because David wanted to meet the man who's been causing us so much trouble." "I haven't caused you any trouble." "Haven't you?" David moved closer, and I could see the intelligence in his eyes. Cold, calculating, completely ruthless. "Marcus, did you really think we wouldn't notice you poking around our business? Asking questions about our methods? Meeting with our competitors?" Elena had been right. They knew. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." Sarah returned with 3 glasses of whiskey. "Marcus, we know you've been investigating us. We know you've been talking to lawyers, trying to build some kind of case against us." "We also know you've been in contact with Elena," David said, accepting a glass from Sarah. "My wife has been very concerned about your attempts to involve her in your difficulties." I felt my heart stop. If David knew about Elena's involvement, Elena's been nothing but helpful. She's tried to mediate between us, find some kind of peaceful resolution. "Yes, she has." David's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Elena's always been very good at playing peacemaker, even when peace isn't in anyone's best interest." Sarah handed me a glass of whiskey, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "Marcus, the thing is, we can't let you continue causing problems for our business." "What kind of problems?" "The Peterson situation, for example." David sat down across from me, casual, relaxed. "That was very inconvenient for us." "I don't know what you mean." "Marcus, one of our associates was arrested trying to meet with a teenage girl. The same teenage girl whose father owns a company we've been planning to acquire." David's voice remained calm, but his eyes were ice cold. "That's not a coincidence. Maybe your associate shouldn't have been meeting with teenage girls. Maybe you shouldn't have interfered with our operations." Sarah sat down next to David, and I noticed she was positioned to block my path to the door. "Marcus, we know you recorded our phone conversation yesterday. We know you have Elena helping you gather information about our business practices." Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact, almost bored. "What we don't know is how much you've shared with law enforcement." "I haven't shared anything with anyone." "Really?" David pulled out his phone and played an audio recording, my voice clear as day. "Elena, we need to call the FBI." My blood turned to ice water. "You've been monitoring my calls." "We've been monitoring everything, Marcus. Your calls, your emails, your movements, your bank accounts." David put his phone away. "Did you really think you could investigate us without us knowing about it?" "The question now," Sarah said, "is what we do about it." I looked around the suite, wondering if Elena could hear this conversation from the bedroom, wondering if our recording equipment was still functioning, wondering if I was about to die in a hotel room in San Francisco. "What do you want from me?" "First, we want you to turn over all the evidence you've gathered. Recordings, documents, photographs, everything." David's voice was calm, reasonable. "Second, we want you to call off any law enforcement contacts you've made. And third," Sarah smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. "Third, you're going to help us with our final acquisition." "What final acquisition?" "Your company, Marcus. Kaine Industries." David leaned forward. "We're going to restore your reputation, put you back in charge, and then you're going to sell Kaine Industries to us for a very reasonable price." "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, we'll destroy everyone you care about, starting with Elena." The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, the traffic outside, the sound of my world ending. "Elena's your wife." "Elena's a problem," Sarah said. "She's been gathering information about our operations for 2 years. She thinks she's building some kind of case against us." "She also thinks you care about her," David added, "which makes her useful for controlling you." "You're going to use her against me?" "We're going to use her to ensure your cooperation. Elena's going to have an accident, Marcus. A very tragic, very public accident that will devastate you and ensure your complete compliance with our wishes." I felt something snap inside my chest. Not break, snap. Like a cable under too much tension. "You bastards." Now, Marcus. There's no need for name-calling." David stood up and walked back to the windows. "Elena knew the risks when she decided to work against us. Just like you knew the risks when you decided to investigate us. She's your wife. She's an asset that's outlived its usefulness." David's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "Sarah and I have been planning Elena's departure for months. Your involvement just moved up our timeline." Sarah finished her whiskey and set the glass down with a sharp click. "Marcus, you have a choice. You can cooperate with us, help us acquire your company legally and quietly, and Elena lives. Or you can continue fighting us, and Elena dies in a car accident tomorrow morning. Some choice." "It's more choice than we usually give people," David said. I looked at these two monsters sitting in their expensive suite, calmly discussing murder and extortion like it was just another business transaction. And I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with a cold, clear rage. They had no idea who they were dealing with. "You're right," I said, setting down my untouched whiskey. "I do have a choice." "Smart man," Sarah said. "The choice is this. I can sit here and let you threaten the woman I love, or I can remind you why I built a $50 million company from nothing." David turned from the window, and for the first time since I'd entered the room, he looked uncertain. "Marcus, I don't think you understand the situation you're in." "I understand it perfectly. You think you've cornered me. You think I'm beaten, desperate, ready to surrender." I stood up slowly, deliberately. "You're wrong." "Sit down, Marcus." "No." I pulled out my phone. "See, while you've been busy monitoring my calls and planning Elena's murder, I've been busy doing something else." "What?" I hit send on a pre-written text message. "Calling the FBI." Sarah lunged for my phone, but I was ready for her. I grabbed her wrist and twisted, the same move Elena had used on Thomas Garrett. "David, your wife has very poor reflexes." "You son of a bitch." "Actually, David, that's where you're wrong again." I released Sarah and faced them both. "See, I'm not the son of a bitch in this room. That would be you." The suite's door burst open, and federal agents flooded in with weapons drawn. "FBI, everyone on the ground, now!" David and Sarah froze, staring at the agents, then at me. then at each other. "Marcus," David said slowly, "what have you done?" "What I should have done months ago. I called in professionals." Elena emerged from the bedroom, no longer hiding, with Special Agent Rebecca Martinez right behind her. "Elena Chen," Agent Martinez said, "thank you for your cooperation with this investigation." David's face went from confusion to understanding to pure rage in about 3 seconds. "Elena, you bitch!" "Actually, David, I prefer federal witness." Elena's smile was back, sharp and victorious. "And it's Elena Morrison now. I filed for divorce this morning." "This is impossible. You can't have evidence." "We have everything," Agent Martinez said, pulling out handcuffs. 2 years of financial records, recorded conversations, video surveillance, and testimony from 17 victims across 6 states. 17 victims? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Elena pulled out a tablet and showed them a legal document. Jason Webb, Michael Torres, Rick Patterson, and 14 others you destroyed for profit. They're all testifying against you. How did you find them all? It wasn't hard, Sarah. You kept very detailed records. Elena's voice was ice cold. Every victim, every method, every dollar stolen. David might be good at planning crimes, but he's terrible at hiding evidence. Agent Martinez finished cuffing David. "David Chen, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, racketeering, extortion, and attempted murder." "Attempted murder?" "The recorded conversation from 20 minutes ago, where you threatened to kill your wife." Agent Martinez turned to Sarah. "Sarah Williams, also known as Sarah Chen, also known as Sarah Morrison, also known as—" "How many names do you have?" I asked. "Apparently 12, Elena said. "She's been running this scam a lot longer than we thought." As the agents led David and Sarah away, Elena and I stood in the suite, watching the end of a nightmare that had consumed months of our lives. "Elena, how did you get the FBI involved?" "Remember when you suggested calling law enforcement? I did, 3 weeks ago." Elena smiled. "Agent Martinez has been investigating David's operation for 6 months. They just needed someone on the inside. So, when you approached me..." "I was already working with the FBI, but Marcus, everything that happened between us, everything we built together, that was real. I looked at this incredible woman who'd risked everything to stop a monster and realized that somewhere along the way, our partnership had become something much more important than revenge." "Elena, what happens now?" "Now David and Sarah go to prison for the rest of their lives. Their network gets dismantled. Their victims get justice." Elena moved closer to me. "And we figure out what comes next." 6 months later, I was standing in the same penthouse where this story began, but everything had changed. The furniture was back, the company was mine again, and the woman I loved was sitting at my kitchen table, reviewing legal documents for the victims' compensation fund we'd established. "The Peterson family wants to thank you personally," Elena said, looking up from her papers. "Amy's heading to Stanford in the fall." "Good for her. She deserves it after what she went through." "Marcus, all of David's victims deserve compensation. The fund is up to $40 million now." "It should be more." Elena stood up and walked to the windows, looking out at the city we'd helped protect. "The FBI recovered $200 million in stolen assets. Every victim is getting their money back, plus damages." "What about the companies that were never targeted? The ones we saved?" "Those are the real victories. 50 companies that still exist because we stopped David before he could destroy them." I joined Elena at the windows, putting my arm around her waist. "Any word on the sentencing?" "David got life without parole. Sarah got 25 years. Elena leaned against me. Marcus, it's over. They can't hurt anyone ever again. And their network? Completely dismantled. 63 arrests across 12 states. The FBI called it the largest corporate crime ring in U.S. history. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city go about its business, unaware that 2 people in a penthouse had helped save dozens of companies and hundreds of lives. Elena, can I ask you something? Anything? When this all started, when you first approached me at the gallery, did you know we'd end up here? Elena turned in my arms, looking up at me with those sharp, intelligent eyes that had first made me realize David had underestimated his wife. I knew we'd stop David. I knew we'd get justice for his victims. She smiled. But falling in love with you? That was completely unplanned. Good unplanned or bad unplanned? The best unplanned thing that's ever happened to me. I kissed her then, and realized that David and Sarah had made one final, fatal error. They'd tried to destroy us, but instead they'd brought us together. What do we do now? I asked. Now we live, Marcus. We run companies, help victims, build something good out of all the wreckage David and Sarah left behind. Together? Together? Elena's smile was back, but it was different now. Not sharp or dangerous, but warm, genuine, full of possibilities I'd never imagined when this story began. Marcus, do you know what the best part of all this is? What? We won. Not just legally, not just financially. We actually won. Elena gestured towards the window, toward the city full of people who'd never know how close they'd come to being victims. David and Sarah thought they could destroy lives for profit. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. They were wrong because they underestimated 2 things: the power of evidence and the power of people who refuse to give up. I looked at Elena, brilliant, fierce, unbreakable Elena, and realized that 3 months ago I'd thought Sarah was the love of my life. But Sarah had been a lie, a performance, a weapon designed to destroy me. Elena was real. Our partnership was real. Our love was real. And David and Sarah? They were history. Elena, there's something I need to tell you. What? When David and Sarah destroyed my life, I thought it was the end of everything. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But you hadn't. No, I hadn't, because losing everything that was fake made room for everything that was real. I took Elena's hands. David and Sarah made me return his wife's calls, pretending to be her. They thought that would destroy me. Instead, it led you to me. Instead, it led me to the most incredible woman I've ever met. A woman who spent 2 years building a case against her own husband. A woman who risked her life to save strangers. A woman who turned their weapon against them and won. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Marcus, Elena, Morrison, will you marry me? She stared at me for a long moment, and then she laughed. Not the sharp, dangerous laugh I'd learned to associate with someone's impending destruction, but pure, joyful laughter. Marcus Kaine, are you proposing to me in the same penthouse where you planned David's destruction? I'm proposing to you in the place where my real life began. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll build a life with you. Yes, I'll help you turn Kaine Industries into something that helps people instead of just making money. I kissed her again, and realized that this was how the story was supposed to end. Not with revenge, but with love. Not with destruction, but with creation. Not with 2 broken people, but with 2 strong people who'd found each other in the wreckage of someone else's evil. Elena, do you know what I'm going to do first thing tomorrow morning? What? I'm going to call every business owner in the country and tell them about David's methods. I'm going to make sure no one else gets blindsided the way I did. And I'm going to help you. We'll create a foundation, an early warning system, a way to protect people from predators like David and Sarah. Partners? Partners. In business, in life, in everything. I looked out at the city one more time, thinking about all the people down there who were safe because Elena had been brave enough to fight back. And I'd been angry enough to join her. David and Sarah had made their final mistake when they'd tried to destroy us. They'd assumed we were weak, broken, easy targets. They'd been wrong about everything. And now they were gone, while Elena and I were just getting started. The story that began with deception and betrayal had ended with love and justice. Not bad for a guy who used to think he knew everything about trust.